Calling the meeting to order any minutes now, literally. 7:01 is the official mark.
Would you like me to call roll, Chad?
At right this minute. Okay, the meeting of Santa Clara Valley Open Space Authority Citizens Advisory Committee is now called to order at 7:01 sharp. Caroline, you would be so kind as to call roll. I would like to ask all of you committee members to turn on your mics when you hear your name called, respond to roll, and then turn your mic off. Thank you.
Aaron Gill.
Here.
Frank Kinsella, not present. Robert Sipple.
Here.
Allison Falwell. Here. Lauren Lewis.
Here.
Raymond Mueller, not present. Raj Banat, not present. Justin Fields.
Here.
Dan Kinney.
Here.
Kathy Sutherland. Here. Steve Mink.
Here.
Lonnie Wong Bissett, not present. Peter Pham, not present. Mayor Burton, not present. Edward Von Runnen.
Thank you so much. We do have a quorum. It looks like one more is coming through the door. But we do have a quorum. At this time, any members of the public will have an opportunity to address the committee on any item not on the agenda. Speakers will be limited to 3 minutes. Do we have any?
There are none.
Thank you. Okay, I will entertain a motion to approve 2 sets of minutes. One for the our regular meeting of January 23rd, and one for the joint meeting of March 9th.
I'll make a motion.
Do we have to do that separately?
I'm sorry, say that again.
So we have 2 sets of minutes in
Yes,
front of us.
yes.
Okay, so
Mhm.
so entertaining motions right now for the January 23rd regular meeting. Thank you, Bob. That's the second. Thank you, Justin, for the second. Do we still need to do a roll call vote for folks online?
Yes.
Okay, so same deal, folks. If you'd be so kind to turn on your mics, answer, turn off your mic.
Aaron Gill.
Approved.
Robert Sipple.
Approved.
Allison Falwell.
Approved.
Lauren Lewis.
Approved.
Justin Fields.
Approved.
Dan Kinney.
Approved.
Kathy Sutherland. Steve Mink.
Approved.
Edward Von Runnen. And Raj, I'll get you at the next.
Okay, that passes unanimously. I will now entertain a motion for the March 9th joint board and citizens advisory committee.
I'll make a motion.
Second. Thank you, thank you. Caroline, you got that?
Dan was the second.
And another roll call vote, same rules, mics on.
Aaron Gill.
Approved.
Robert Sipple.
Approved.
Allison Falwell. Lauren Lewis.
Approved.
Raj Banat.
I'm absent.
Abstain. Justin Fields.
Approved.
Dan Kinney.
Aye.
Kathy Sutherland. Steve Mink.
Approved.
Ed Von Runnen.
Approved. I believe it is time now for a quick opening report from me. Just want to let you all know, first of all, I was in Rancho Cañada del Oro yesterday. It's incredible. It's blooming, and I've never seen so much water there in the 10 years I've been hanging out there. I would strongly suggest you get out there in the next couple of weeks. Another thing, for the meeting tonight and going forward, if you have a question and wish to speak, get my attention by a nod or turn on your microphone. I'll give you a wag back and note that you have a question, and then you can turn your mic off, and then I will be sure that you're addressed. Okay, that way nobody has to speak out of turn or raise their hand or anything like that. I promise to be looking for you, and I will acknowledge you. All right. with that, we will move to new business. Our first item is consider funding application from the city of San Jose for Elliott Park. Megan Drager is going to be presenting. I believe I first have to give an opportunity for the public to speak, or is that after the presentation?
You can do that after.
Through after, all right.
Okay. Good evening, CAC members. Good to be with you tonight. It's kind of fun to be back in person, seeing each other face to face after so long on screens only. My name is Megan Dreger, and I'm the Grants Program Manager. Tonight, I'm going to be presenting an application that was submitted by the City of San Jose to our 20% program. I'm going to start with a brief overview of that 20% program, how it works, and then I'll be joined by San Jose City staff to present the project, and they can answer detailed project questions if you have any. The 20% funding program is funded by District 1, the assessment funds, and it's open to the cities and county within our jurisdiction. Each year, the authority determines the allocation to the 20% funding program, and it's essentially 20% of the capital fund. So that's why it's called the 20% fund. The 20% funds are then allocated to the various jurisdictions based on how many parcels are within our jurisdiction. So the grant program funds open space projects generally. This can include acquisitions, restoration, and site development, such as construction of parks. According to the guidelines, which are on our website and are also in your packet tonight as Exhibit A. Since 1997, the authority has awarded more than $9 million in 20% funds, and these include a few key projects offhand were Three Creeks Trail, Marshall Cottle Park, Eula Stack, and Eddie Souza Park, which is in Santa Clara. The City of San Jose has recently applied for a new park on Alma Avenue. The city currently has about $1.3 million available in their 20% allocation, and they are requesting $1 million for this project. Note that this funding is on a reimbursement basis, so the work is done and then we reimburse after the fact. And it requires that a conservation easement is recorded in favor of the authority before any funds are released. So with that, we are joined tonight by Hanlei Wang, who is a landscape architect with the City of San Jose's Parks, Recreation, and Neighborhood Services, to give us a presentation, about this project.
Hi, everyone. My name is Hanlei. Sorry, let me get my slides up so I can share the screen. Okay, so let me share my screen right now. Okay, yeah, so I'm the associate landscape architect from the capital team within Parks, Recreation, and Neighborhood Services of City of San Jose, and I'm here today to give you a short presentation on Elliott Park Master Plan Project. So the future Elliott Park is located in San Jose Council District 7's Elma neighborhood, southeast corner of Highway 280 and 87. It's also at the corner of West Elma Avenue and Sanborn Avenue, adjacent to the existing Elma Community Center. So the current character of the neighborhood within a quarter mile of the site is defined by residential housing and industry. The demographic data for the area indicates the following information for year 2019 at the time of the survey. The total population was 16,851 people with a median age of 33. Over a quarter of the population are school age, with the majority between the ages of 35 to 64. With this in mind, the park design aims to serve more than just school-age youth. Community outreach suggested a strong desire by older residents for shaded permanent seating, a prominent feature in the park design. The park program seeks to support small-scale neighborhood events, and the future park site will provide a walkable, neighborhood-scale outdoor space for family-oriented passive recreation, go in close proximity to Bellevue Park, Elia Park's location affords better visibility on a more active street. So Bella Middle Park is the one at the lower left corner of this map. So although it has playground as well, it is less accessible because children need to cross busy Almaden Road with two larger intersections at Alma Avenue. So this one is the Bella Middle Park talking about. The land for the future park was generously donated by Rocco Elia and Luis Elias Scagiloni for the construction of a children's park with appropriate permanent signage indicating that the park is dedicated to the memory of Luis Scagiloni Elia and Rocco Elia. The ownership of the properties was formally transferred to the city of San Jose on December 22nd, 2020. Here's a brief recap of the 3 community meetings we conducted between April and August of 2021. During the Park Master Plan community meetings, the project team learned from community members that Rocco and Luis were well known and loved in the community and recalled their generosity. One person spoke about their care for the neighborhood's children and mentioned that they would offer a piece of candy to children that visit their store. So this information further support the staff naming recommendation for Elia Park that we already passed on our council meeting last month. So besides adhering to the donation condition, the main goals for this project are to have high quality facilities and programs to engage the community and contribute to a healthful community, provide an equitable park system, create community identity, and promote environmental stewardship. The final design that incorporated the feedback from the community meetings is shown here on the right. It includes play spaces, open lawn areas, a passive recreation area, a seating area, climbing, shade trellis, and a community wall. So on the left side is the perspective drawing from one of the entrances, looking into the park from Sanborn Avenue towards the existing community center and parking lot. On the right is showing how the mural wall can be used to set up movie nights to benefit the neighborhood. We hope to get open space 20% funding programs fund to help us achieve the goals and construct this high quality park that will benefit the residents of the Elma neighborhood. Thank you for your time. Is there any questions that I can answer? Hi, Megan. I completed my presentation here. Is there any questions that I can help with answering?
Caroline. Is that better? Hunley, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Sorry about that. We had a brief technical
Okay.
where we were muted, so I'll turn it back to the question.
Thank you for the great presentation. Looks like one of the things that I see that happens in my scale of things in the landscape industry is that there's a lot of monies that are put towards the building of spaces, but it seems that when it comes to maintenance and care, there's not a lot of funding that goes that direction. Can you elaborate on what the city of San Jose's philosophy is of maintaining parks and keeping them up?
We do allocate funds for maintenance every year, and we have a standard that we set up. So it depends on the acreage of the park. We will dedicate the funding to the park. Depends on the size of it.
So is there funding enough in your opinion to maintain the spaces that you have currently? Or do you fall under a heavy burden when budgets get tight?
Yes, we do have the funding allocated to the park already. I do understand that we are kind of short on staff in general, but then we are trying to catch up on that. And then the funding is we've been allocated that funding and secure it for sure.
Thank you, Emily.
Any other questions? Question from Kathy?
Thank you, Chair. And this question goes to Megan, and this is a fantastic site for the park. I know the area very well, and I do understand that a park is very much needed there. But when I read the information, I was thinking back on other funds or other ways that that 20% fund has been used. And I was concerned about the match. So Megan, can you just kind of refresh everybody's memory? And I think some of the CAC members weren't even here at the time when we've been able to allocate 20% funds.
Yeah, thank you. And first, a quick digression to something I should have clarified, that CIC's role. So tonight we're looking for you to make a recommendation or not to the board, and the board would make the ultimate award probably next month. But coming back to your question, so the 20% program, yeah, they're few and far between lately. We haven't had an application since, I want to say 2019. So this is the first one we've had in a while. And it is a program, it's pretty unique. It's different than our other grant program. The guidelines that were in your packet there provide guidance, but in some places they're a little bit vague. You know, there is a room for interpretation. And so looking for your guidance or questions tonight. In terms of this being like other parks, I think the most similar thing we've done before with 20% funds is the Sousa Park that we were just talking about. And in that case, what it funded, this is in the city of Santa Clara, it funded a community garden that was a significant part, but only one part of a larger community park that they were installing. And so what we did in that case was we had the funds directly only fund the community garden portion, and the conservation easement that we hold is only over that community garden portion. So it doesn't cover the play structures and the other things. In many cases, our funds are a fairly small portion of a major construction project. And so in examples like that, it hasn't been too difficult to sort of carve out that we want to fund only this piece. And if that's direction that we get, we've been already spoken to the city about possible approaching it that way so that we could identify. Hanley had a graphic a moment ago where you saw there's a lot of turf, vegetation along the outside, that kind of thing, depending on how we wanted to approach open space as if the board approves it.
And then my other question would be, if there was going to be a consideration of funding a certain aspect of this park, what would make it identifiable with the open space authority? Is it going to be just your basic shrubs that are in any city park? Or is there going to be something that sets it apart and lets everybody who goes there know that these funds are here from the open space authority, which is a very different entity than the city?
Yeah, that answer might be a little bit of both of us. Let me start, and then I'll turn it over to you, Hanley, in terms of what's actually there on site. But in terms of the recognition, so the project is generally, it's the city's project. So she can speak to how they're gonna, what kind of shrubs and what they're planning. But in terms of recognition, we are very different agencies. The 20% program, in addition to the conservation easement, also requires signage saying that we funded this project. And so we would have that there. And part of the process, we go through a grant agreement, we get the conservation easement recorded, and then we go through a process of where the sign should go. And we actually ultimately approve where the sign is, make sure it's the size that we specify and that sort of thing. So that's the recognition side of your question. Hanley, do you have anything to add in terms of the particular features, especially that turf and vegetation area?
So one thing that it's not clean show on this graph is there will be a small garden that was requested from the donor it's also to memorial the donor. So besides just lawn and shrubs, there will also be a well-designed garden there. So we are still at the design phase. And so what kind of shrub and how the garden will look like is still right now in design. And so I don't have that to show you right now. But one thing is we do try to use the shaded trees to provide a green space in that neighborhood because it's more industrial looking, and so we are hoping to even like planting additional street trees along the Simple Avenue will create a more serene space for the people going there.
Mr. Chair, if I might,
Please. Yes.
just following up on Kathy Sutherland's question, Megan or Hunley, could you maybe help our Citizen Advisory Committee understand what the total project budget is estimated for this park, and what percentage or aspect the $1 million request from the Open Space Authority would be in relation to the total budget?
I can start off, and Hunley, correct me if I have this wrong. So this would be the Open Space Authority's $1 million if approved, and the city has allocated about almost 5.2 million. So between those two, it gets to the 6.2-ish million to get through all the way through construction.
That is correct.
And has the city funds been allocated? Are they set aside?
Yes, those are set aside through our different funding. And so, yeah, we understand this program is by reimbursement. So part of the million was secured so we can have that to spend before we get a reimbursement from OSA.
Go ahead, Justin.
This may have been in the presentation. I apologize if I missed it, but how large of an area is this piece of property as far as acreage, and what is currently on the piece of property right now?
It is about 0.33 acre, and it contains 2 parcels. Currently, I think there is like 1 or 2 residential on top, and then also commercial building like a Mexican supermarket and a real estate store, I believe. But then their lease are ending soon. And in fact, I think the supermarket already, the lease of the supermarket already ended, and they already returned the key back to the city.
So there
And
was
so,
involved. And... Okay, thank you.
Yes, the entire site will be demolished before
yes,
the new construction can start.
that's correct.
So Hunley, the size of the parcel is again?
It's about 0.33 acre.
You got 1/3 of an acre or 13,000 square feet? You're demolishing something? Bring this in? Is my understanding this correctly?
Yes, we will demolish the buildings on the site. So I can bring up Google.
What's the overall footprint?
Overall footprint is 0.33 acre.
So you have a $6 million project for a 1/3 of an acre?
So this site, it's a little bit special. So first of all, the reason why it's expensive, first of all, is because of the current construction inflation costs. So we try to pad in more in case if something happens, if the inflation keeps on going up and we will not have enough money. And then also because the property is right next to another residential building. So we are building this community wall to try to block the noise for the neighbors. And then also because they're the street right next to it, they are kind of busy. So we are putting in fence to make sure that the children playing there will be safe. However, at the same time, since it is a small park, so we want to make sure that the fence does not create a gel feeling to the people going in there. So for the trellis and the fence, we are choosing a more designful, customized styles to achieve that feeling. So there are not those kind of on the shelf fence that you just buy. So that also increase the cost. So there are some constraints and limitation at this site that so we are trying to use the design strategy to solve the issue. And that's why part of the reason why the cost is high for this small boutique park. And so the majority of the people living here are in the low income low income status. And so we are trying to put in this nice park to this area to make sure let them feel that they are not being left out, and also helping that the good design of this park will make the environment feel more friendly for the users going over there.
Do you have any other facilities going in here, like bathrooms and such like that, or is it just pretty much what you're showing now as a?
No, it doesn't have a bathroom, but then we have community center right next to it. So by owning this property, it is a good way that we can expand the usage of the community center and then allow more people to use it. And also at the right now, because I think there's a dead end somewhere around here, which is causing some safety issue. There's some like drug selling, those kind of business at the back of the cul-de-sac. And so by opening this up, by having this property, we are hoping that it will make it more visible to the people. And also in the future, when we redesign the community center, it will make the entire site be more useful for the residents.
Thank you, Anna.
And just one thing to add, Exhibit C in your packet, it's maybe a little bit easier to see, is an aerial view where you can see it's really immediately adjacent to that community center so that it could be sort of used as one larger space.
Here is the community center, and here is a park. And so here is the cul-de-sac I was talking about that has some drug dealing going on. And so, yeah, and we do have some like basketball playing and stuff, and we are planning to doing some renovation at the community center at the moment. So when we do the design, the goal is to connect these two properties to make it more look more comprehensive and more beneficial for the residents.
Thank you, Lonnie.
Hey, sorry, my voice is going to sound crazy. I can't really see on the map on the screen, but you said residential areas were part of the demolishment, or was that? I heard that there was a Mexican supermarket that was leaving the space in order to do the work, but was residential part of that as well, or?
Sorry, can you repeat your question again?
She's asking if there was residential was also part of what was being demolished, and I can
yes,
believe there was
so
one residence. Is that right?
yes, so the current people living there, they used to work for the donor, and then so per the donors the will, they were allowed to stay at the property for like I believe like 5 or 10 more years, and so that term will end in a few years. And well, actually no, the term will end this year. So, before, yeah, it will end like recently before our construction starts. So that's why we are working on the design right now, and then hopefully we can start the construction next year.
Thank you, Allison.
Thanks, Hanley. I have really two questions. One is I read in the packet that that crime is a challenge, as it is in many places. And so my question is, by you know, that sounds like the hypothesis is by opening up the space that will help reduce crime, but I'm hoping you can kind of address what other crime mitigation efforts are part of this plan, and if you can comment specifically on lighting. Is there a plan for sufficient lighting for after hours activities for residents and especially children? Thanks.
So right now we made some edits along this edge that connects to the community center. So it will be more open up on this side as well. So besides without the buildings on this property, people can see through from both roads. This portion will be more opened up, so it will be more visible to people from all sides. And in terms of lighting, I need to get back to you. I believe at this master planning stage, it's not like we don't have a detailed design on that yet. But then I'm pretty sure that is addressed it will be addressed in the CD phase. So yeah, I'll make sure that we add that into the CD package. Yeah, because we understand safety is an important issue for that site.
Thank you, Hanley. Another question?
Yeah, I have one simple question. You mentioned the donor wanted a garden, and you said garden. Well, garden to me can be one of two things: a garden or a community garden. Which is it?
It is not community garden. It is more likely to be a floral garden. But the exact plants palette hadn't been picked up yet because again, right now we just started doing the design phase of the actual site. So this that you are seeing here is through the master planning, and it was conceptual. So details like what will be in the garden wasn't really specified out.
Thank you. And I believe that is all for the questions. I guess this would be a good time to open it up for public comment. If there's any members of the public that would like to speak on this, you'll be limited to 3 minutes.
None.
There are none. Okay, then I believe the board has asked us for our opinion on this. So we would take a vote as to whether or not we approve the award of $1 million towards this effort.
Right, so if the discussion is over, you could make a recommendation to the board to approve the application.
Okay, I kind of took that as the discussion. Is there any more?
Sure. I guess my initial thoughts, I like the park. I like the idea of bringing open space and green to an area that needs it. I like the application of safety. Also it'd be inclusive to be graffiti and kind of safety measures be highly encouraged in this application. I do find the cost of $454 per square foot as a really high cost to build a park. Obviously, I'm not in that phase, but I think that's a really high cost. So I think that's something that's going to be prevailing wage application to the city of San Jose, where it goes out just to public bid. I'm not quite sure how that works. When you could probably, or maybe you could probably embellish that as well. So I like the idea of a park. I like the idea of trying to bring open space to people that really need it. I think it's really important. If you can't get out, you can't get to where the public spaces are. It's nice to have it close by, but I do share the concerns of safety out there because it's a very it's a tough neighborhood. It's a tough neighborhood. So good luck. Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron. Any other comments then or discussion? Go ahead, Kat.
Thank you. What I'd like to consider recommending is that if this project does go to approval, get approved by the board, the city Parks Department works with the Open Space Authority to make sure that the plantings there follow the missions of the Open Space Authority. Looking at grass, I'm not sure that that fits within what we stand for as a group. And then if the city's gonna put crepe myrtles and sycamores in the sidewalks, you can find those on any sidewalk in San Jose. And I would hope that the city would be encouraged to work with the organization to find trees and plantings that would be more representative of our mission. I don't want, a bed of tulips to me is not necessarily something that works for me and the organization.
I hate that I have to say things. My thoughts around this is I love this. I know the area. But my thoughts were more around, I asked the residential question because of the thought of displacement is an issue with rent and such. I'm glad that that's not the issue. But with community parks and such, the ones that succeed in locations like this were the ones that partner up with their community during the build and build up excitement and really work within the community to find out what exactly they need. So I wasn't here for the earlier part of the presentation, but was hoping that this build and the way it was kind of constructed was centered around what the community wanted, not necessarily what we think is pretty. As also Kathy mentioned, it has to fit with what we want to see and push forward with the Open Space Authority. So I hope that that's part of that if this goes through, because this area absolutely needs something like this. So I don't know if this is final phase design, but I do hope the community had a say in what they're going to see at this park.
Yes, I do want to answer to this comment. So we had 3 community meetings, and then we collect their comments on how would they like these parks to be. And so these are the result from the community meeting, that these are the features that they asked for. So yes, the community did engage with the design, and we originally we showed them 3 different designs, and this is the final design that they picked.
Thank you.
Another question.
Thanks for humoring me as the new kid on the block. So Hannah, you mentioned that the budget was generous because you're anticipating maybe the supply chain issues and other things will cause the costs to be higher. If, and I know it happens so rarely, the project comes in under the $6.2 million, how does that work? Has the Open Space Authority granted up to $1 million? Because what the request is about 20% of the total budget. And so if the total budget is lower, does the percentage that the Open Space Authority grants remain proportional, or is it a flat $1 million regardless of the total cost of the project, if that makes any sense?
So we don't think that the total cost will be lower than so 20% fund, that makes the 100% to be $5 million. And so we believe that the total cost should come close to around $5 million. And so in that case, I think we are requesting for the 100 million, but for the detail, I can check with my supervisor and also discuss with Megan to see how that works. But I believe that we are requesting for the entire 100 million.
Yeah, on the grant agreement side, our standard grant agreement, which is also on our website, so folks, applicants can see it in advance. It is written as just a flat fee. There are contingencies if the project doesn't happen or things like that, but because it's on reimbursement basis, so it wouldn't change the million, but it would ensure that the project went forward. That's the standard template that we use. Good question.
Thank you. Any
Any other questions? Just real quick then, so, I know that there will be an easement in the authority's favor. In light of all these questions and comments, does it come with any design influence?
The easement isn't about the design per se.
No, I mean, does the 1 million come with any design?
Oh.
influence?
Well, to a point, certainly there could be direction. They're at the fairly, early phases of the project. I would have to, you can't tell, Hanlei, but I'm looking over at you on the screen, that we would have to coordinate to see, some things may be able to be accommodated and others not.
For example, you want to say like, okay, we want native plants and, we want, beneficial pollinators in the garden and, does that seem like a reasonable expectation or is the design pretty much set and it's a binary up or down on funding?
Usually grants are more binary up and down.
That's my experience. So given this feedback, that's why I asked.
Yeah, it's not to say though that we couldn't have that conversation, would want to make sure that we are hearing back from them before final decisions so that they know what they're agreeing to by getting the funds, of course.
So with that, we will kind of keep in mind that it may be what it may be. Is there any other additional comments or questions? Then with that, I believe the best way for this to work would be somebody to put out a motion that we recommend funding this to the board, and then we can up or down vote that motion. Thank you, Aaron.
I'll make the motion. I move that we advise the board to fund it.
Okay, thank you, Greg. I'll take a second. Okay, thank you, Ed. Caroline, if you would be so kind as to take a roll call vote and the committee
I'm sorry,
members.
just add can we make amendments to that motion? Can we say that we move this, that we vote to support or not support this funding with the following, that the lighting be taken care of, that the plantings be native plants and be plants that reflect back on the organization.
So Kathy, I wish this type of discussion would have happened sooner, but I think.
Can't we make a friendly amendment to a motion?
We absolutely can. We absolutely can, but I would like to open this for discussion, because then I think we get a little, because again, like Megan pointed out, these grants are usually up or down. So the odds are we won't be able to have that level of input. So I guess then if we do an amended motion, and what we tell the board is we approve this if we have this influence and we don't get the influence, we're voting, then we're not recommending the park. And that's not, I don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater, as I think the saying. So I would strongly suggest we.
May I restate my motion?
Yes, sir.
I would suggest that we advise the board to fund this project and that they also take note of our reservations.
I think I can second that. Okay. So in anticipation of an upcoming vote, I will ask committee members to go ahead and turn on their mics. And am I correct that we are ready for that vote, Carolyn?
Yes, does this motion that I typed in capture what was stated?
I believe the second was by Ed Van Drunen.
The first motion, but the amended motion was seconded by me.
The word I used was reservations. It says recommendation.
Oh, okay, so the motion would be to approve the recommendations to the board. And let me change the second part. And take note of the, oh, I see what you're saying. Reservations.
The reservations of the CAC. That's scary, we could use the word concern.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, just so the board is clear when this comes before them, it might be helpful if you specify what those reservations are.
Yes, I agree with you. We don't understand what is the motion is. What are the limitations we're putting or concerns?
So I propose, get your pencils up. I will propose an amended motion that the CAC recommend that the board go forward with the funding of the $1 million grant, noting our reservations with respect to lighting, native and beneficial plants, safety, and I think that would be and safety. Oh, safety and cost, yes. I see you, Mark.
So, yeah, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to mention that in reference to some of the things that are being mentioned here, especially the native plants and pollinators, that there is a report that the Open Space Authority produced in partnership with the San Francisco Estuary Institute and Spur a few years back, called the Urban Ecological Planning Guide for Santa Clara Valley. And that might be an appropriate reference if you should want to consider that in your recommendations to the board. I just wanted to mention in case folks aren't familiar with that.
Okay, thank you for that context, and I see a lot of nodding, but I think that's a little too specific. I think this motion by saying we're concerned about beneficial plants, and we don't have to make them reference a specific document for my motion. If somebody wants to amend it again,
I'll accept his friendly amendment.
so we have a second for the friendly amendment, but Raj.
Yes, I have a question. Motion must be specific, and when we are putting that community issue, this issue safety, then we have to explain what we are looking for, what safety, what our parameters are. Then if we are specific, we are approving this, but we are recommending those. Then if we are subject to those conditions, then it will never ending approval.
Right, Raj, and I think we've worded it appropriately. We stay in the front, and we are suggesting they go forward, but that they note our concern.
Yeah.
So there we go. I think we have Steve.
Sorry, Raj, to your point, I had the same question. But we have the privilege and the benefit of not having the right to check. The board writes the check. So that's why we can add this reservation.
But we should be specific. We say we want safety, but safety definition is like we don't know, and we just adding for the sake of addition. Because safety, we don't know what safety we are looking for. Do we have a parameters? And that's what we are looking for. We don't. We are approving, and we should say we are approving this with those recommendations.
If I could, someone to go ahead and help people think about this. Onley's profession as a landscape architect really concentrates on all these aspects. So it's pretty thorough in terms of covering what we're concerned about. It's a small space, and I think it needs to be interactive. And I think you're dealing with a very rough neighborhood or a difficult neighborhood to work with. And I think the safety aspect is something that really needs some attention. And that's going to be expensive. It's not going to be inexpensive to be able to bring those aspects to this park, which probably contributes to a little bit of the cost of it in terms of trying to make it safe for the neighborhood to be in this park. So I think that Onley's probably got a good idea talking with the community of what they need out there in terms of trying to go ahead and bring in certain plant materials and all that type of stuff. I'm suspect that there's not enough maintenance costs associated with implementation and the development of the park being put forward. So I'm on the side of the fence that sees a lot of these parks, a lot of money goes in and there's not much money budgeted to maintenance. So, you know, trying to design a park that has a lot of eccentric aspects to it makes it more difficult for the maintenance crews to take care of. So sometimes it's best to go ahead and have these pretty much, you know, sort of interactive, they're easy to maintain, and they work well for the neighborhood and who's involved in working with the park. So I think Conley probably has a very good idea of communicating with the people that surround and live there as to what's in their best interest.
Thank you.
Well said. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Ray.
Just briefly, was this all discussed in depth? More or less what everybody was concerned about in our notes, in our minutes? Are those minutes not submitted to the board?
The minutes are, the official minutes are a combination of the action minutes taken and the recording. So the actual dialogue.
If we asked them to pay attention to our concerns, they couldn't go back to the actual dialogue and get exactly what was discussed here. And it wouldn't have to be put into this set of notes.
That is correct.
Address both concerns. Thank you.
And if I can add, when we do the board report, generally it includes a summary of the CAC discussion and the CAC vote. So that's another place that could be a signal to the board.
Through the chair, also, CAC member Mueller, we also have a member of the board of directors here tonight, Director Annabelle, so she will definitely carry that back.
And I've got lots of notes.
Any other questions or comments on this before we take a vote? And if you're not satisfied with the motion, now is the time to recommend a friendly amendment. Steve,
Call for a vote.
all right, we've been called to the mat. That's not the official term, but it's something similar to that. All right, thank you. So committee members, please, mic's on, ready for roll call vote. When after you say your name, go ahead, mic off.
Aaron Gill,
Aye.
Robert Sipple,
Aye.
Allison Caldwell, Lauren Lewis,
Aye.
Raymond Mueller,
Abstain. I wasn't here for the whole discussion.
Raj Manat,
Aye.
Justin Fields.
Aye.
Dan Kenny.
No.
Kathy Sutherland.
Aye.
Steve Mink.
Aye.
Lonnie Wong Bassett.
Aye.
Ed Von Rennen.
Aye. Okay, thank you so much. It looks like the motion passed. I really appreciate the rich discussion on this. We have coming up next, item number 2, 2022-2023 Urban Grant Program Guidelines Review, Program Review and Subcommittee Formation. Jackie is out sick, but might be helping us out a little bit, but Megan will be standing in.
Yes, hello again, everyone. Yeah, unfortunately, Jackie is not with us this evening. Thank you. Great, so I'm going to be filling in. And so this is sort of, Jackie and I wear many hats. This is one of our other hats. This is the larger grant program, the Urban Grant Program, that will be coming back to you for a special meeting in a month that we're going to, or a couple months that we'll be talking about tonight. So just going to give a quick overview of the Urban Grant Program, a summary of the applications that have been received, talk about the review process, potential CAC subcommittee, and talk a little bit about what that is and what we did in the past, and any questions that you might have. So first, this particular grant program, we've had this grant program since 2016. We've had 4 cycles, depending on how you count it. It's roughly been every other year. We've given out about $3 million in the past. So this current round, we have $1.5 million to give out. The pre-applications were due in November, and the full applications were just due last month in February. And we are right now in the middle of reviewing those and going through them. This is a reimbursement type grant, meaning once it's approved in a grant agreement, when they do the project, they have to front the costs, so we pay after the fact. We're looking through the receipts and documentation and so on. The applicants, it's open to local public agencies, schools and school districts, as well as nonprofits. And we have the way we did it this year, we divided the grant program into sort of 2 chunks. We have the programs side, which is like that sound, there's a lot of programmatic stuff, environmental education programs, things like that. The dollar limits for that was $20,000 to $100,000 per project they could request. And of that 1.5 million, half of it, we divided it in half. So 750,000 is available for those program grants. Those are on an expedited review process. So those are under staff review right now, and they go directly to the board in May. And never know for sure, but we expect somewhere between 11 and 15 awards for those program applications. The other side that will directly involve the CAC is the capital project grants. So this is capital projects as well as planning. For these applications, folks could request between $40,000 and $250,000 for a project. And like the other side, this has half of the money available, $750,000. And we expect probably somewhere between 4 and 6 awards. These applications tend to request higher dollar amounts because they're pretty expensive construction projects in many cases. It's a 3-year grant period, and we'll be talking about this in a moment, but the way this works, we have the staff review and the CAC recommendation that you'll be making after a special meeting in May. Then all of that goes to the board. So the CAC is really directly involved in this review. We have 4 project categories: environmental stewardship and restoration, parks, trails, and public access, environmental education, and urban agriculture and food systems. And projects can be in more than one category. So we'll often see a project, for example, that might build a trail, but also has some kind of educational component or programs that happen on that trail. So for this round, we have gotten 31 applications requesting about 3.3 million. And remember, we only have 1.5 million to give out. So it is a competitive process and it can be very difficult. There are a lot of great applications out there. We have 22 program grant applications and 9 capital grant applications. Of the applicants, we have 9 organizations that have not applied to us before. And when we go to the special meeting that I mentioned, where we'll be talking about these in detail, we'll have summaries of each one available for the CAC in the packet that you'll receive. So for the capital applications, it includes different things. It includes planning and the capital improvement itself. But as I mentioned, projects can be in more than one category. So there can also be programmatic elements. Again, that example, like maybe there's a trail, but there's also some kind of educational programming along the trail. And most projects have a combination of different projects types, and there's a few examples there. Within the capital projects, again, we have 750,000 available, and the applications have requested about 1.8 million. So it will be competitive. It will be a very interesting meeting. Looking forward to hearing your feedback on those applications. And we expect somewhere between 4 and 6 awards, depending on which ones are chosen. This is a timeline of the review process with the program and capital split out. The capital projects, we're in the staff review phase right now. The CAC review, the special meeting, is in April. The board is in July, and then we go into grant agreements, and the projects would start this fall. So the next thing is to talk about this special CAC meeting. So this is a meeting that it's the only topic on the agenda. It's a special meeting. It can take quite a while depending on how many applications there are and how much discussion takes place. This one is planned for May 22nd at 5:30 p.m. And this again would be only the capital grants, and it's the only topic on the agenda. The way the meeting will run, for those who've been on the CAC for a while, you might remember these have run very long in the past. So we have worked both on in the design of the program, but also worked with the chair, vice chair to make sure that we've talked about the meeting and ways to make it flow efficiently. So it will go, each application will be discussed. The applicant will have a chance to speak. Any other members of the public will have a chance to speak on that item. CAC members, of course, can discuss and ask questions of the applicant. They're the ones with the most detailed knowledge of the projects. You might have specific questions. And then the CAC will vote on each one. And one thing for each one, we'd recommend, we've talked about this, it's of course the CAC's meeting, but last year there was, or 2 years ago when we did it last, there was some confusion in the way that the motions were made, where sometimes it was I vote to approve and sometimes it was I vote to not approve. And it got very confusing when people were voting yay or nay, which one they were voting for. So those are some of the things that I think we can streamline this year to hopefully make it a smoother process.
A quick comment on that. We're just going to vote to approve or not this year, and everybody's going to be subject. Can we wait till the end, Steve?
Almost done. So what we recommend, and at the CAC's discretion, of course, but in the past, what we've done is had a CAC subcommittee formed of 3 members, and their job is to take notes at that special meeting. And then those notes, we have a timeline, but they have a couple of weeks to sort of pull them together. And then those notes go directly into the board packet so that the board will see the CAC votes for each application, as well as those notes. And those notes are sometimes the place where you might get into, maybe they all had the same vote, but this is where that you see some of the nuances of, this was the best project. This was, we love XYZ about it. And so that subcommittee then is responsible for compiling those and sharing it with staff so that we can get it into the board packet. And if this all happens, we would need that feedback by June 16th to get it into the board packet. And then I think this is the last slide, but this is just a visual of what the board packet looked like last time to give you a sense of where the CAC feedback goes. So for each application, up at the top is a basic summary, what the project is, the abstract, where it is, who has written the letters of support. And then the bottom half are all the recommendations. So the staff recommendation is the score and the rank. Below that, we get the CAC recommendation, which is the vote, but also how many ayes, nays, and so on. And then below that are the CAC comments I mentioned that subcommittee is responsible for if you choose to go that direction. And so with that, take any questions you might have about the process.
I see you, Ray.
Thanks for going over this all again, Megan. I think it's absolutely important that all of us read this packet 5 times. If there's ever a packet you read before the meeting, put another way, question whether you should be at the meeting if you haven't read the packet. That's my opinion. The question I had about the rules is last time we thought we were quite creative. I agree, it was quite confusing to have voting on not negatives. So yeah, it'd be great to clear all that up. We thought we were helpful and creative when somebody asked for 100,000, we said we recommend we vote yes for 80,000. I know there was pushback. Have you guys decided one way or the other, or what kind of leeway we have? You want us to, if they ask for 250,000, then we would have funded them at 100. You want us to just say no?
I'm of 2 minds how to answer that. On the one hand, I'd say these are sort of the way we're approaching this as staff reviewers, and I'd recommend the CAC do the same. For the voting portion is just up or down. Is this recommended to the board? But the comments is where you could add some of those nuances.
It's up or down based on the recommendation. Thanks.
Okay, Ray, sorry, my bad.
So $1.5 million is being spent, and the staff decided that half of it would not include us. Is that how you pronounce that?
Yeah, so it used to be that we divided it by small and large, and the large went to the CAC and the small didn't. We sort of reconfigured it because the small essentially were the programmatic ones. And so those are the ones that are on the more expedited review process. The CAC is welcome to attend that board meeting or submit review. When we send out the applications, we'll send you those applications as well, even though they're not formally coming to the separate meeting.
Thank you. The concern that I have about splitting it in half that way is that we're not dividing it based on what's the best project.
we're dividing it based on this concept before we even see what the projects are. It would seem to me that of those 9 capital projects, there might be enough to take up the 1.5 million that would be a better investment. So for future, it might be interesting to allow the grants to fall where they may, rather than to divide the funds before they're even decided upon. Also, before that meeting, since these people are allowed to speak, it might be easier for us when you submit us a packet, if there were a list of video links to their presentation, that we wouldn't then have to necessarily go through the full presentation in this. They could give us a fuller presentation, and it would give us more time to listen to what they have to say before we walk in the room. Then when they come in and give us a presentation, we might have a couple of questions for them rather than have them to list and then go through this long thing. Just a thought. It may be useful if they wanted to present a video presentation. I mean, that's what they're having people do for jobs at this point. To present the video presentation of what they want. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bonnie.
I actually was going to ask about if we were going to be able to see them present, because I didn't quite understand the meeting, that we were going to be able to watch them. Because yeah, I agree, a video would be nice to fuller understanding of what's on paper, because grant writing is hard. So understanding who wrote the grant, matching that up is really nice to see, put a face to the paper and to the submission. So I don't know how that'll work out. I like Grace suggested, but I want to support that thought too.
Thank you. Just a quick response. That's an interesting suggestion. I'll look into that and think about that a little bit. The way that the public process and the meeting goes, in the past, we've given one official representative from the organization 3 minutes. So they have that's at the chair's discretion. They have 3 minutes, and then other folks have the amount that the chair has allotted for all public comment. So how they present it, is usually, it can vary. Sometimes there are applicants who are unable to attend. And so, that makes it harder to judge theirs sometimes. So give that some thought about the video. Maybe that's a way around that.
Raj.
I have a question, pardon my ignorance on this respect. How do you actually, is there any training material for the non-profit organizations or other organizations, how to apply the grant? And what are you are looking for in order to go through smoothly? Is there any training material available for non-profits?
Yeah, that's a great question. And as someone said, grant writing is hard. And so what we do at the beginning of the process, we do have a series of public workshops. So those are things where people can join and we walk them through how to apply for a grant. And I hope that those are useful. But what I think is often more useful is Jackie, who is unable to be here tonight, and myself, we make ourselves very available to meet with folks. And so often people will come and share their idea with us. So we're not coaching them on literally how to apply, but we're giving them feedback on how applicable it is. We talk through the guidelines, and sometimes they have specific detailed questions about what something means. For capital projects, there are often a lot of questions about site control, because that's something that's really, really important. When we're doing a construction project, make sure that they, of course, have the permissions in place that they need to have. So we do try to make ourselves, like I say, as available as we can to answer those kind of questions for nonprofits or anyone else.
I have just another question. How you advertise that for nonprofits and others so that they are aware of there is a grant available?
That's a good question. And that's something we're always looking for new ideas. If you have a new place to advertise, over the years, we have developed a pretty big mailing list. I want to say it's something like 1,200 names on there right now. We also send out a link to the state of California keeps a list of all public and private schools. So the main contact at the schools, as well as advertising locally through various contacts, for local grant opportunities. But if you have other ideas, always let me know.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, okay, now, with respect to the formation of subcommittee, what are the mechanics of that? Does that happen in this context? Does that happen? Okay.
Through the chair. Or somebody could nominate, somebody else, or they could nominate themselves and, it just, someone could make a motion then to approve those nominations and then, we can vote on it.
Okay, so real quick, if these are volunteers on the other side of me that are stepping up, that's awesome. If they're not, I really do think the subcommittee would be super, super valuable because again, it gives the CAC an opportunity to do a deep dive into these programs that we're not going to be able to do even if we're fully engaged for the 3-minute presentations and even if we pre-read our packets. This subcommittee will have an opportunity to really become the CAC experts on these projects. Also, we'll have an opportunity to dive in to any that are not able to present for the actual meeting. Raj and Ray, do you have questions or comments before I open it up to volunteers? Okay, sure.
My first question is, right, if we have a subcommittee, they decide something, it should come back to CAC or it will go to board of directors.
Megan, would you be so kind as to tell us how this has worked in the past?
Yeah, in the past, it has not come back to the full CAC, partly because of the compressed timeline. But we could certainly, I need to look at the calendar because the CAC doesn't meet more than every other month. There isn't a lot of time without extending the review process a lot. Yeah, or having another special meeting.
Okay, this means, but subcommittee decides, CAC will not be able to know what's going on.
Raj, but I understand that the subcommittee doesn't decide anything per se.
No recommendation.
We get a summary of their findings before the meeting, right? That's part of our packet. Is that
Of
correct?
do you mean the findings like
The subcommittee recommendations, like
well, so the subcommittee would have the votes from the night. So you would, see this one passed 7-2 or whatever. You'd have that information. You'd have the packet that the staff had put together, which is the summary of all of the applications. And then it's essentially adding notes that you are, sort of those nuanced thoughts. They could be positive, they could be negative, but the things that were discussed by you or your colleagues.
How many members of committee?
3, it's been in the past, 3 members.
Minimum, maximum, or only?
Yeah.
Yeah, so less than 8.
Yeah. It sounds like it could be more. But 3 did seem to work well in the past. Right.
minimum 3. And that sounds like kind of like an accurate description of note take. Like
Mhm.
they'd be taking notes at the full meeting.
Yep.
And then those notes would be included in the packet that we would get for our meeting and the presentations of the grants. Is that correct?
Not their notes, but they would have, so the big meeting would have the packet that looked similar to the one that was on the screen a moment ago, except without the recommendations. But the summary of the project, how much they requested, stuff like that. The 3 subcommittee members would essentially be note takers in the moment. And then the way it's worked in the past is they sort of compare notes. They meet once, sometimes twice, compare notes to make sure they kind of had similar sense of the evening. This is a CAC item. Jackie and I are not part of it, but we can definitely be available for that meeting if there's any help we can give with our notes or who said what or something like that. Sometimes there are clarifications that are needed. And then that subcommittee writes them up and submits them.
Okay, so forgive me, how is what they do different than what we do in the meeting we have here?
In the meeting is the vote. So that's the only thing in terms of what's getting recorded and going into the board packet. So this is adding the narrative feedback that otherwise it would just be the CAC vote is all that the board would see.
Got it. Great.
I'm trying to understand what the value there is. We've already made the vote. And then we go into the packet and we find that we've supported something, yet we really shouldn't have supported something because we found something that we don't negate that for some reason. Why wouldn't we do this work before the meeting and present, and we're subcommittee to this committee, therefore, if we do not report to this committee before they vote, it seems like more time. I understand it's not a nuanced concept, I get that.
I led the committee last. And great to do it again. So many people that would be great on it, right? But let me give you an example of what happened. You saw the example of the grant. We'll all be reading those 5 times before the meeting. We'll all be hearing it. The 3 people will be picked tonight. I think the number was based on it not being informed. So that might be why you're thinking, oh, we could have more or less, is because we have more members than we did last time. The main thing is that they're not informed. And the presentations will happen. So take it, for example, the $750,000 to allocate. We'll do, and it's expected to be 4 to 6 grants. There are already 9. I think what we had last time was 750,000 that we had the grant. We come in and Drew says yay or nay on each one and walk out of the meeting feeling after 3 hours we did a tremendous job of voting for all 9 of them. And so you've actually not done anything, but you've delegated, you've given commentary. Those 3 note takers are taken and they walk away from that meeting and we listen and we don't put in our own opinions, but we net it down and we come up with a proposal. I think we came up with, I don't know what the number was, but if it was 750 to allocate, we probably came in at 800 and said, that's what we recommend. So it was not a proposal of what the CAC voted on. I mean, it was what the CAC voted on, but also with the reality of what the budget is.
Thank you for the explanation. I now have to concur with Raj that we are voting on something that we don't know well enough to vote on if we have to have a subcommittee come back in afterwards and tell what we really meant. Because that's what it sounds like. Well, if they voted for all 9 of them, then you said, well, wait a minute, we should only do these. You're exactly what Raj said, is making a choice and making a suggestion or a recommendation to the committee, to the board, rather than all 9 do these 4 or 5 or whatever.
So
True?
a bit like the subcommittee's a bit like a jury. They're not to get, we chose, I guess it could be anything, but we chose to not accept any other facts besides what were presented. We did not go research it afterwards. What was given to us ahead of time at the meeting is an input, staff recommendation is the input, the presentation is an input, and all our discussion and the notes from that discussion is an input. And then then we come forward with a recommendation.
So we would have the exact same information as a subcommittee as the committee itself had.
We didn't come back to the CAC.
I'm concerned about the process. It seems like we're putting the cart way behind the horse. Because if we're the jury, the judge ultimately makes the final decision about how much time is given, since you use that analogy. And we are the judge. Then we vote yes to all of these, they're all guilty. Going along with your analogy. But then a subcommittee, the jury goes off and says, well, these 3 are more guilty than the others, so they get more. Does that not make sense?
Through the chair, I think I can
Please.
clarify. The subcommittee is not meant to change anything of those CAC's recommendations. So in that sense, it's not that it goes from 9 to 3. It is simply that in the past, the very first year we did it, when it was only the vote, like in this example, if all 9 passed, the board doesn't have any nuance within that of maybe one was an absolute favorite and some were, not as excited about. So this is the place where it's what is said during the meeting is what is the feedback. So it's additional CAC feedback that was said during the special meeting. And the feedback we've gotten from the board in the past is they appreciate hearing a little bit more nuance of yes, it passed 7-0 or whatever, but this was everybody's absolute favorite project, or they really think it's valuable for XYZ reason. So it's that kind of content that ends up in the CAC comments in the past.
Thank you for your information. I would suggest one last thing then, that there be very definitive guidance provided to that 3-member committee. For instance, we want you to look at these 4 really intently and see, or something of that nature. It would seem to me guidance, the committee gets to do what it wants, but that would be at least providing parameter. Because we have to look through all 9 of them again with all of those notes.
Raj, I will come to you, but I'm gonna give Steve a chance to respond directly.
The grant providers provide us a tremendous amount of information. The staff provides us their feedback. And actually, I thought one of the most valuable things, well, actually, I love the scoring. I don't know if they'll do it this time, last time. I really appreciated it. They said, these are the ones we recommend. Boy, these are the ones that if there was another $50,000 or $500,000, that's what I'd recommend next. And then the rest were just others. So that's a helpful recommendation. By the way, what we're doing is recommending. The board can say, well, that's quite interesting. And now here's what we're picking. And actually, one of the ways and somebody mentioned it, one of the ways I thought was our most helpful communication is that the top 2 or 3 items were passed 9-0. Then it got into 7, 2 abstains and 1 no. And you could really see our rank order list as we communicated. But that's it. We vote and then it's on the committee, subcommittee, and then it's on that they go to the board. Well, I think the presentation goes.
Raj, you wanted to speak, and Lonnie, do you have something after that? Okay, great.
Yes, very quick. Actually, this is a suggestion for procedural point of view. When subcommittee have any recommendation, can the CAC member also know what your recommendation is before it going to board? Is that procedural point of view it's okay or not? Like you made some recommendation, but CAC other members who are not a part of the CAC, they are not aware of what your session is. It directly goes to the board. Then other CAC members, how they can come to know these are your recommendations at the same time.
I would defer if I could, Chair. I'd defer to our process ordering, and that is if the subcommittee was to communicate back out, we're getting into legal issues as a transparent group. So either we decide we have an extra meeting and we come back and present and then open it up to vast amounts of discussion. Yeah,
No, it's not a matter of discussion, it's a matter of information.
But if
you want to be
that,
informed of what subcommittee came up with and not have the opportunity to communicate. Certainly you should be informed. I agree with that. But if we wanted a dialogue, I think we get into
that we can't do that. So I don't see, yeah, is there an issue with, as I suggested, but I had the order wrong, that your notes, that your notes go out to just by email to the full CAC?
if no communication is allowed back.
Right, because that would have to be, because otherwise that would be a serial meeting, and that would be, against the law.
I mean, we need to be picking the people that we. I mean, this sounds ludicrous in a political world. We're gonna pick the subcommittee we are trusted to not put their personal benefit. All the time we spent as a subcommittee was writing out the notes. We took notes of everyone's comments and everyone and then we had 3 lists. And then we went back and said, Ray said this and this and this. And Kathy would tell me, nah, I didn't hear him say it that way. Or he did say that, but he meant this. So what we came back with was a consolidated, probably shorter list of what the notes would be that we felt were on point to what the members meant, not how I felt what Ray meant, twisted with my view. Now did I articulate Ray? And then Kathy said, yes, you did or didn't, and then whoever else, I don't remember who else was on it, said, no, we didn't, we got it right or we didn't, and then we moved on to the next comment, the next comment, the next.
I just want to clarify, so the subcommittee are basically the class pet, the class teacher's pet taking notes, is that what I'm understanding? And we're just gonna simplify what we heard in class and then provide it back. Okay, we're just basically taking everything, all the chitter chatter that happens in the classroom and going. So in summary, 5 people said the exact same thing, so it's now 1 bullet point, not 5 different notes, right?
Exactly.
Okay, I was a class teacher's pet, so I understood exactly what was happening. I'm so sorry. Like, oh, cool, we're just taking notes.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's really what it is taking the notes, agreeing that what they are. It's not a separate recommendation. It's
Right,
just what was
just making sure
discussed during the meeting.
Well, we heard all the voices.
Exactly.
Put it down.
Yeah.
So the board doesn't have to go through minutes of hearing each of us
Right.
have an in-depth conversation over 20 minutes. Right. Okay.
Right. And sometimes even within the same summary, there might be things that are fairly positive and things that are fairly negative
Understood.
because different things are said about the same application.
Yep.
Thanks, Lauren. Since Jackie's not here, Megan, and I'm new to this whole thing, structurally, procedurally thing, you've got to have this done by May 22nd, correct?
Mhm.
And you're still reviewing stuff, so you'll be reviewing stuff till what time?
Oh, so May is when the CAC meeting is. I think it's June 16th that we would need the
But your applications are down.
the applications.
Filtering in, right?
They came in February. So we're in the process of doing the initial reviews. There's a lot of eligibility screening and things like that we go through, and we're reading the applications now for the initial staff review. We have
Okay.
sort of a draft staff review
Sure.
before the CAC
We'll
meeting.
review and make sure that they're legitimate. and
Yep.
They meet all the qualifications of being an applicant, correct?
Exactly.
Okay, so now the scoring application in terms of an applicant coming in, you have a scoring application for CAC members, right? Or is that just up to however we feel?
For the
Or is there-
CAC, the
is there kind
CAC's.
of- There kind of a scoring mechanism that's been established for an applicant.
Yes, there's a very detailed scoring mechanism that the staff use
Yeah.
based in the guidelines of how many points they get, depending on the way their budget was set up, or the project planning, organizational capacity, things like that,
Feasibility,
feasibility, absolutely. So the CAC, the guidelines, you're using the same guidelines as us, but instead of coming up with a numerical score, it's just the up-down vote along with the additional comments that we've been talking about.
Perfect, okay. And so when we come in here on May 22nd, we reviewed all the packets, like Steve's recommended, and we actually have an idea of the packets and the applicants themselves. We can come back and have a up or down vote depending upon whatever packet is in front of us. Correct?
Well, it's all
They've
in.
got 3 minutes to go ahead and explain to us what their project is and the merits of it.
Exactly. So they'll talk about their project, maybe a few other public comments if folks are here, and then you'll vote the up or down
And then we'll go-
with discussion that.
We'll go ahead and represent our districts and say, well, if we feel it's good for a district, or feel it's good for the open space, we'll say yay, and if we don't, say nay.
Mhm.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. Lonnie, I like what you said about the subcommittee is they compiling notes. Would it help this committee feel more comfortable if there was direction given to the subcommittee that was your focus and that you do not make further recommendations? Because I wouldn't feel comfortable.
That was what I was asking for.
Yes.
Parameters. Be specific. This has always been done this way, but people have always done it, don't want to do it again. So it's likely to be the 3 of us that are new. We can go off and do whatever we want. Everybody else, but you really will.
Okay.
I had another question. So the presentations are on the 22nd, 3 minutes.
Mhm.
We're not voting in front of them, right?
You are.
You are.
Yeah. Oh, that's really uncomfortable.
Yeah, it is definitely a competitive grant.
Like showing us Sarah McLaughlin's like sad cats and dogs and stuff singing, like, is that?
We're gonna raise now.
Ready. Oh my God, I'm sorry. Okay, that makes this very scary. Okay, thank you.
I'll add just one more recommendation. That is when we come back. We've all been through this before. There'll be some number, at least 9 presentations. I believe the CAC spent an hour to an hour and 10 or 15 minutes on the first one.
Oh my God.
45 minutes on the next one, 30 minutes, 20 minutes. Hey, can we do this one in 7? So that's why I want you to really think about the packages ahead of time. Think about how you would rank, come into the meeting with you rank ordering. You know, how would you don't have to come up with 750,000. Actually, if we can't change the amounts. So if you rank order them, when it gets down to 750,000, you pick the ones you wanted. The commentaries are helpful information for the board, but that's just the reality. And when we walk out of the meeting that night, we will have done the same thing. We will have created a rank order list. Because there'll be unanimous votes, near to unanimous, near with abstains, a bunch of no's. So we'll have created a rank order list. So you might do your own before you come in.
You can reject them all, Lonnie.
I'm a student. I already written down 3 R's. I'm like, so there's 3 R's to this: read the grant, research the proposal, then rank them. So I'm not kidding. Yes.
One other kind of human characteristic, and that is, it shouldn't be this way. It does happen this way. Think about whether we want to do it this way. There was a comment, well, the speaker, the grant requesters may not show up. Well, I can tell you, since Kathy and I, we wrote down the comments. We wrote them down nicely, but that was basically, they didn't show. And they got scratched off, because there's a lot of time was invested. So, let's pace ourselves. Let's not, spend an hour and a half on the first one, because that's not sustainable. That's what OSA is all about, is sustainability. So let's prepare, stay on course, realize our job is to vote and to get the rank order list and make a proposal back to the board.
I want to drill a little further down into something, a point of that, which is that this isn't, like, this meeting isn't a design meeting. We're up or down in these proposals. We're not redesigning these proposals or suggesting edits to these proposals. As fun as that would be. But again, that's then an exercise, that's an hour per proposal. And last year, I believe, was a 6-hour meeting. And I hope for those of you that weren't there last year, I hope I hope you're scared. I scared you. And for the rest of us, I hope we try and beat that. That's a good idea, Aaron. Or was that an idea? Oh, sorry, I was. No, I don't know. I have to reschedule the meeting. Ray, did you have?
That's why you're. There was nothing. You said you were going to move into volunteering. So
Yes.
Let's move in.
Let's go ahead and open up the floor for volunteering.
I worked in the capacity of doing this job for the AIDS Coalition Silicon Valley for 4 years. We raised money and gave it out to 8 different charities and actually going through this grant every year. I've done this work, presenting to the board. But I'm happy to read them and be in that. Not read them out, read the notes and help compile it.
Okay, so we have one. Do we have?
I'm a teacher's pet, I'll do it.
All right. That's two. And I believe we need at least three. See if I would urge you to go back.
All you need is.
An experience. So should we have new folks and like what, what experienced person be?
Excuse me, the terminology would be something you said you're familiar with, correct?
Myself?
Yeah.
Mhm.
We wouldn't. Yeah, that would be helpful.
Is that called tag?
You're it.
Yeah, my issue right now, issue, super busy. Yeah, it's gonna be hard for me to go ahead and break through and do that. Otherwise, I'd be happy to go ahead with you, because I know some of the projects are. Yeah, I did, just, the problem with Rick, participating is just, it's a calendar issue for me. I'm just super active.
That's kind of my obstacle to entry myself here is seasonally horrible timing.
So what do we do if we have two?
Yep. You can have a
So-
committee of two.
And I understand the timing, so it starts May 22nd.
Mhm.
Note taking, we need to compile all the notes and submit by June
16th.
16th, so it's a 2-week time period.
I'll volunteer to be the third, if I could put some structure. We'll be having like 2 phone calls, an hour to 2 hours each, and then we're done.
I could even
And a
do a
sharing,
Zoom.
sharing of a spreadsheet. Yes, a phone call, Zoom, but it worked best to just put it into a spreadsheet and we compile the 3 and we set ourselves a time limit and we come up with the rank ordered list.
Right. My other nerd teacher pet suggestion, is it weird for the subcommittee to help after each discussion of each of the proposals to go, okay, so we all agreed upon one bullet point, everyone said yes, safety was an issue, okay, great, or B, this, and everyone goes, yeah, that's cool, good. And then is that not a thing?
For how many hours we spent?
Yeah, I don't think we have,
Another
we
thing.
just don't have to.
It was a 4 to 5 hour meeting.
We have that.
Six. I'll never forget.
Will we have access to the audio? There we go.
Yeah, right after it. I was just thinking the subcommittee could help corral weird things.
Matt, you can't be on the pen. But if you have any other comments, or if you have any other comments,
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I just wanted to circle back to the comment about the role of the subcommittee. And again, the emphasis is on objective note taking, summarizing the commentary into discrete, concise bullet points, but not necessarily doing any additional rank ordering. That's been done with up or down vote. It's just capturing the commentary. Okay.
Oh, yes, we're not putting scoring, commentary, anything else like but the voting of the CAC makes a rank order.
I do think I confused some folks by confusing this subcommittee with another subcommittee in terms of your ability to do some additional drilling down. But that won't be. You'll have the same information we have. You'll just, you'll have better know.
That's all we'll have.
I move that the CAC approve the subcommittee of Bonnie Wong-Fett, Ray Mueller, and Steve Mink to act as the subcommittee to report to the board on the grant proposals with the understood condition that they are to capture what has been said and not provide any additional feedback.
I'll second that statement.
Open that up to discussion. I confess I'm hoping there's none. And then we'll open up a roll call vote. Would you like me to attempt to restate the motion? I totally could. I bet I could do it better than second.
Sure, let's see that.
Okay, so I move that the CAC approve the formation of a subcommittee of Lonnie Wong Bissett, Ray Mueller, and Steve Mink to capture the comments and forward them to the board without any additional feedback, commentary, opinion, feedback. What do you guys want to come forward?
The meeting, we've been given direction. They're not going to change anyone's mind. But I do think that it's going a step
So
forward.
without any additional feedback,
And then we had Lauren moves.
The wording should be, may I offer a friendly?
Friendly amendment, coming at you.
Create a report to the board based only on the information presented the night of the meeting.
Yes,
To create.
and I'll accept it as the second with the amendment.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Create a report to the board based entirely on the information received at the committee meeting for 5/22.
That's after the formation of the subcommittee part.
I'll read it out. Okay, so motion to nominate Ray Mueller, Lonnie Wong Bissett, and Steve Mink to create a report to the board based entirely on the CAC meeting on May 22nd.
Is that good?
Yeah.
Ray.
Doesn't have the word subcommittee.
Do you want me to add that?
It is actually. quite a
Do you want me to add that?
I think we should.
To a CAC subcommittee. Right. I'm nervous. To create, okay, here we go. Motion to nominate Ray Mueller, Lonnie Wong Bissett, and Steve Mink to a CAC subcommittee to create a report to the board based entirely on the CAC meeting on May 22nd.
Very good.
And then that was Ray. Motion by Raymond Mueller, seconded by Robert Sipple, and I am ready, Chair.
Okay, here comes the roll call vote. Please ready your mics.
Aaron Gill,
Yes.
Robert Sipple,
Yes.
Ellison Paulwell. Lauren Lewis,
Yes.
Raymond Mueller,
Yes.
Raj Banat,
Yes.
Justin Fields,
Yes.
Dan Kenny. Dan Kenny has exited the meeting. Kathy Sutherland. Yes. Steve Mink,
Yes.
Lonnie Wong Bissett,
Yes.
Ed Von Rennen.
Thank you.
Any public comment on this item?
None.
Yeah.
All right, so, the next item on the agenda is information only. Yes, an informational item, on the Americans with Disabilities Act transition plan.
Yes, thank you all. I am Jennifer Hooper here to provide the update and seek feedback on the authority's ADA Transition Plan project, Americans with Disabilities Act Transition Plan project. So tonight we'll cover a general overview of the ADA Transition Plan process and dive deeper into the public engagement planning for the project, as well as prioritization criteria for accessibility barrier removal, which will become part of the transition plan. So as a reminder, the authority has made commitments in the area of justice, equity, diversity, inclusion, and access and accessibility. And the ADA transition plan is a step toward that in, as we say, putting the A in JEDIA. So as you see on the slide here, this is a summary of the percentage of the US population which has a disability, which is nearly 30%, or severe disability at 17%. And as the third bullet there indicates, you are more likely to develop a disability as you age. Folks 75 years and older are 5 times as likely to have a disability as people 18 to 24 years old. So the Americans with Disabilities Act was established by the federal government in 1990 with an update including design standards in 2010. The authority's ADA transition plan will also consider the U.S. Access Board's Architectural Barriers Act guidelines for outdoor developed areas and the California Building Code. So the ADA requires that public agencies with over 50 staff assess their public serving programs, activities, services, and communications for barriers to access. And this is accomplished through a self-evaluation, which consists of a questionnaire completed by staff, agency staff, on practices related to items such as communications, purchasing, capital planning, public meetings and events, and access to records. And then additionally, a public agency must survey the physical spaces of public use facilities. And this is all toward the end of the development of an approach to reaching ADA compliance over time, with the results of the self-evaluation and facilities assessments and barrier removal implementation included in a transition plan, which is published by the agency and made available for the public. A transition plan must also identify an ADA coordinator and staff who will be responsible for the implementation of the ADA transition plan over time. Currently, some of the, just to highlight some of the authority's actions toward accessibility, we connect people to nature through things like virtual programming made available for the disabled community, providing resources about accessible outdoor spaces at authority preserves and at other parks and open spaces. We have partnered with local accessibility advocates to offer this programming, as well as with educators and other nonprofits to provide accessible programming to school groups and youth. We've enacted accessibility in our communications and social media through things like alt text on photos in social media posts. And then we're also designing new preserves with accessible features, including at Mayan Oyakma Coyote Ridge Open Space Preserve. And then as we make improvements to existing preserves as part of new capital projects, including accessibility as well, for example, in the new bridge and day use area at Rancho Cañada del Oro as part of the August Creek Bridge and Day Use Area project. And then as well as for the proposed improvements to the Hearts Delight Trail at the Coyote Valley Open Space Preserve. So an ADA transition plan will contain the following elements, of course, an introduction and process overview, the results of the authority's assessments, so that self-evaluation questionnaire that was completed by staff, as well as the results of facility surveys. And so in our case, this will be our 3 open preserves, Coyote Valley, Rancho Cañada del Oro, and Sierra Vista, as well as the authority's administrative office at 33 Las Colinas. It will also include recommendations for improvement to our program services and communications, and then include an implementation plan for barrier removal of those physical barriers at our facilities, and then summarize the prioritization criteria that was used to plan the removal of those barriers. It will also outline the authority's grievance procedure. So actions that someone takes with accessibility concerns, and then indicate the responsible staff as part of the transition plan. So to summarize the timeline here, the project kicked off in last summer of 2022. The authority hired Sally Swanson Architects to assist with the development of the ADA transition plan. We held a use and management committee meeting in July to orient them to the process and the ADA transition plan, what to expect. We've completed over this past winter, the staff completed interdepartmental staff representation to complete the self-evaluation questionnaire. We've completed those facilities assessments, like I said, at the 3 open preserves and here at our administrative office. And then looking ahead, spring, here we are in 2023, we're holding the Citizens Advisory Committee meeting tonight. And then we're going to begin stakeholder outreach. On the next slide, I'll get into that a little bit more about the stakeholder outreach planning and ask for some of your feedback. And then looking ahead, we'll begin to plan and hold community meetings. Summer of 2023, we expect to have a draft transition plan to seek stakeholder feedback specifically on that draft plan. Hold a use and management committee meeting to review the draft plan. And then around fall of 2023, anticipating the final transition plan to be shared with the board for review and approval. And then ongoing into the future would be implementation of the plan and the evaluation of our progress. So in terms of public engagement, we have a project webpage for this project. So an ADA transition plan project webpage, which outlines, describes the project and then provides documents and will include documentation from meetings that have been held, and then project timeline and a place for interested parties to sign up to stay abreast of project updates and upcoming opportunities for engagement. We have completed outreach to accessibility advocates in the community. And these include, for example, Saved by Nature, Bay Area Older Adults, the Santa Clara County Office of Disability Affairs, Parents for Change, and the State Council on Developmental Disabilities. And we anticipate holding, so as part of the ADA transition plan process, holding community meetings or workshops, a combination of virtual and in person, and asking questions to the public, especially those accessibility advocates, folks who are living, working in this world, and then listening to that feedback. This could be in the form of a survey or perhaps a focused structured interview questions. And then again, ongoing Citizens Advisory Committee use and management and board engagement. And so I'm looking for your feedback tonight on whether there are stakeholders who you would recommend that staff reach out to. Potentially locations for holding these in-person public meetings, and then whether you have requests for presentations in your district to any organizations or groups that you feel would benefit from this information or would have feedback. So you can give that information to me tonight in this meeting, or feel free to email me. And so as I mentioned, we will include prioritization criteria, or prioritization criteria will be used because of the, so as part of the facilities assessment, we're understanding all the physical barriers that exist at authority facilities, or 3 open preserves and 33 Las Colinas here, the administrative office. And due to the it isn't feasible to address all of those barriers at once due to time and staff capacity. So in order to prioritize which barriers we'll address through the implementation of the plan, we'll develop prioritization criteria. So these are the criteria that we're considering and asking for your feedback on. That is safety, so prioritizing barrier removals that address safety for visitors with disabilities. Geographic distribution, prioritizing barrier removals that widely distribute the availability of accessible programs and facilities throughout the authority's jurisdiction. Usage levels, prioritizing barrier removals at facilities that receive high levels of visitor use and other sites of high public interest. Public feedback and request, so prioritizing barrier removals at facilities that have been identified of interest by the public. And then project readiness. So this is considering the cost, the ease of implementation, and general project readiness for barrier removals. This would be prioritizing barrier removals that leverage existing capital improvement or maintenance projects to make efficient, cost-effective use of the resources available for barrier removals. So one way to think about that would be considering clusters of improvements to ensure more accessible spaces overall. And then also considering whether these are staff level maintenance projects or whether they would require a design or engineering consultant. And so again, looking for feedback on those criteria, and I will end it there.
Thank you, Jennifer. Any questions for Jennifer? Aaron?
Wow, that's huge. That's immense. That's a big project. Just thinking of it, you mentioned virtual program. What does that include?
So we have, I'm not the expert on that, but our education programs administrator coordinator, Terry Rogaway, has held virtual programming in part, I believe, prompted by the COVID pandemic. And so this could be like providing, it would be like providing scenery at our preserves that is available online so that you wouldn't have to be at the preserve to experience. Mark, do you have anything?
Yeah, through the chair, I can add a little bit too. Thanks, Jennifer. It also, I think part of the verticality is that working with a school, the education program provides instruction to a class that then they follow the next year in the same classroom and provide the next level of education so that there's a follow-up and additional, that education provided fits together all the time.
So if you're working with stakeholders that have, limited mobility and things of that nature, that would be like a virtual programming application, like a headset type of a thing or something.
Or even just that it's available online.
Even available online
Right.
for classwork and stuff like that.
Yeah.
In terms of, I look at open space authority, pretty much kind of self-serve type of an application. You guys open it up and we get to go out there as part of the public to experience it in your own manner. So this kind of opens up liability and safety, and all those kind of deep rabbit holes that go various places, right? Because it's difficult to go ahead and encompass every disability, everything. And there's just so many different abilities or disabilities out there. It's difficult to go ahead and cover them all. So I guess, and are you thinking about doing like programs to bring disability or disabled people into the open space arena to experience this, or how do you envision it?
So the design of programming itself would not be part of the ADA transition plan necessarily. There could be like recommendations to continue this type of programming or explore, provide it more as part of the program services that we offer. But we wouldn't be designing that type of program through the transition plan.
So trying to keep this open and keep it, as open as possible to everyone. The safety issues get pretty big. And the dollar bills probably get even bigger on that type of thing. Trying to go ahead and cover that. Is that part of the program that you're trying to encompass?
It would be, so for example, so take Coyote Valley Open Space Preserve, for example, we have ADA accessible parking spaces. And so those are subject to the California Building Code, for example, as well as ADA. And then there are accessible routes of travel that are required per.
Example, take Arrowhead.
Right. Yeah. And then so in parks and open space, because of it's recognized that due to the terrain, obstacles, visibility, things like that, that they don't fall under the same requirements as the built environment. For example, like a parking lot or restroom. But we do have guidelines that we can refer to, the US Access Board outdoor, the guidelines for outdoor accessible areas that I mentioned. So the capital improvement projects that we are planning now, those take into consideration those guidelines. And so that has to do with, surfacing, slope, width, things like that.
Yeah, I'm just thinking as soon as a quadriplegic in a chair, and they want to be outside, that's a lot to encompass in terms of being able to make it accessible. So
If I may, Jennifer, but this project doesn't, and you fact check it, please. It isn't intended to make all areas of all trails accessible. but rather the built environments, which are the staging areas, like, so paths to get to the picnic table, an accessible restroom, and maybe, a half a mile of of fairly level trail. But then the rest of the park is the rest of the park. They're seeking to remove barriers as far out as they can, but the practical application is focusing on, for example, basically the staging areas and the areas immediately around the staging areas, and not so much
view areas.
for 100 yards down the trail, 200 yards, a half a mile down the trail up the hill.
Okay, thank you.
Was that accurate and helpful?
Fair, yeah.
Okay.
Question, Bob.
Yeah, that works really well. Another thing that I found, because I worked with ADA systems for the park system for San Jose, community garden was the first ADA one established, and I got quite the education. One of the things we noted, for example, is you don't have to have every trail accessible. Perhaps a consideration to one that is not quite as steep, where it isn't necessarily good for a person all by themselves, but a participant or a guide or a friend can push them much easier. So we found all kinds of things that actually worked. And the minute you open it up, they come.
Any other points of clarification or suggestions, again, or stakeholder groups you want to see included? Right, please.
I do want to commend you on keeping this these as virtual and in person, because that does provide for a lot of folks over on the east side who are working 2 jobs to keep their house, the opportunity to pop in for a meeting from their car or their home or break. I'm wondering if those meetings might be available for someone who cannot get off at that hour to see and then provide feedback after the fact, so they can maybe go in the next morning and watch it and send their notes to someone. Is that possible?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Any other questions or feedback? Okay, we leave time now for public comment, if there is any. If you have some, you'll be limited to 3 minutes. And if there is no additional discussion here, we'll move on to the next item, which is to review and discuss the Citizens Advisory Committee draft annual work plan. That will be presented to us by Lee and Mark.
Good evening, CAC members. Lee and I will be presenting this item, as you mentioned, Mr. Chair. And in the interest of time, since we're already past 9, we're going to keep it brief, but certainly open to any feedback and questions. That is the intent here of this item. So without further ado, what we want to discuss here is a proposed work plan for the coming fiscal year that would be from July 2023 through June 2024. And the idea is to develop a CAC work plan in parallel with the agency-wide work plan that the board would consider and approve generally by June. And so that way the CAC work plan can be aligned with that of the board. And so the draft proposed here, developed by staff based on last year's work plan, you'll see shortly there are a lot of similarities, is just a draft. Once feedback is received tonight from all of you, we can go back and present the updated work plan for approval by the CAC at the next meeting. And then that would be proposed to the board for final approval. So the themes for this fiscal year are elaborated upon in your packet. These are agency priorities for the year. So I'm going to assume that you've read through those, and there'll be further information provided by the general manager in Thursday's workshop for the board. Making a comparison of last or the current year's work plan to the current year, you'll see that a lot of the objectives have been carried forward. These are the items that have been identified by staff as priorities for important work that the CAC does. The one change you'll see highlighted in green on this slide is that the two related to planning have been combined just for simplicity, but because they relate very closely to each other. But otherwise, both elements are still there in that objective. So then going through the objectives in a little bit more detail. The first one is about CAC members participating in volunteer intake in order to gain knowledge and skills about the agency. Some of you who have been around the agency for a while already have a lot of that information. It certainly doesn't hurt to get refreshed, but especially for newer members, it's really an important process. And then once those skills and knowledge have been developed, then you could apply those to outreach, stewardship, public program activities that are defined through our volunteer program. So a couple of examples of those might be outreach booths at events or stewardship activities that involve members of the public. All those are really important activities. Supporting CAC recruitment. Right now we have a full complement of 15 members at the CAC, which we're really super happy about. But should there be openings in the future, then it's really important to have a CAC, for instance, through a subcommittee, work on recruiting more members. This has been really successful in the past, by the way. Objective 3 is providing support for community engagement efforts and providing input on planning department projects. So planning projects like Mayan Oyakma Coyote Ridge that the CAC had provided inputs on in the past, but also really importantly, doing community engagement and outreach for the Coyote Valley Conservation Areas Master Planning, or CVCAMP for short. And there will be more information as time goes on exactly what that would entail, but it is a lot of engagement with the community to bring people's awareness about those projects. And then objective 4 is, these are sort of other tasks as required, but some examples of this might be promoting 30th anniversary events and promoting other types of events that come up during the course of the year, like with the master planning, but this one specifically for other projects that come up. So that's it can entail all sorts of different projects. With that, Lee, can I hand it to you?
Absolutely. Thanks, Mark. Good evening, committee members. Lee Roush here, batting cleanup this evening. Usually I say I know I'm standing between you and lunch, but I know I'm standing between you and your pillows right now. So really will wrap this up quickly. Let's see, get our slide here. So our 5th objective is to assist with any updates to the urban grant program. You had a wonderful presentation by Megan Drager earlier this evening, so you know what's coming down the pike for the current solicitation. Well, after that solicitation is done, the grants team is going to want to circle back to you and get some feedback on the process and the guidelines. So that's you can look forward to that. Relatedly, we do a solicitation generally every other year. They are not set dates, so we believe there might be a solicitation in fiscal year 23-24. So that begins July of 2023, ends June of 2024. I always have to kind of reset my calendar in my heads. We would also ask for your help in doing outreach for the next solicitation, which will probably fall within that time period. External training. So in our quest to continue the professional development of CAC members, staff is recommending about $4,000 be added to the budget for the upcoming fiscal year. I think the current budget has about $3,000 in it, and I believe that's untapped money. So if there are trainings that you'd like to attend, simply coordinate with the chair. They should be approved by the chair. They should be related, of course, to the mission
of the OSA and further your role as a CAC member. For those maybe not familiar, California Special District Association, or CSDA, has many even free online webinars. They have live trainings, they have conferences, a lot of information about special district governance and some of the challenges facing special districts, and other topics as well, including leadership and board training, if you're interested in going that route at some point. Also, everyone should have received a login when you onboarded, and that wasn't yesterday for just everyone, but one member practically. So if you can't find that information, Caroline can provide that to you. And as members of CSDA, you'll find a lot of their offerings are free, but there are other organizations out there. Read a few of them for you. The California Council of Land Trust, California Parks and Recreation, Together Bay Area, California Climate and Agriculture, or CalCan, and the Land Trust Alliance are just a few of the organizations that we often recommend you check out, and we can provide a list of those with websites for you. Then we've got, last but not least, is making sure that the governance for the CAC is clear, that it's understandable. Much like grants, the CAC functions to make recommendations to the board. The CAC handbook is actually a board approved policy. But from time to time, we find that things maybe aren't quite as clear as they could be, or maybe something should be added to the handbook. So we look to the committee to work with the chair and bring forth improvements. I want to say not last year, maybe the year before, this body decided to make some improvements along the lines of attendance, following up on attendance, and if I can find the last one in my notes, you can tell my eyes are not so good without my glasses on, but then I can't see you. The process for maintaining your seat when seats expire, and not doing a call to the public to fill seats, but making a very simple confirmation that you want to continue your seat. The next steps, just to summarize, we will be accepting your feedback tonight. We will bring the plan back to you at that May 22nd meeting, so right before you hear all the grants, for hopefully a final review after we've incorporated your feedback. So a final review and then a vote to recommend it to the board for approval. We'll bring that to the board on June 22nd, and then the plan would be implemented beginning July 1. And with that, I think Mark and I are ready for any questions or feedback.
Flag. Okay, if you don't have any questions, any feedback on the 8 priorities? Okay, Bonnie.
Can we see the list, the full list of the objectives? I think there's this.
And while she's
Show
bringing that up,
focus.
it is in our online agenda. If you click on this item, there's an exhibit A, which has not only these descriptions, but it drills down a little bit more. Yes, right.
I always bring up diversity. I don't remember hearing the word diversity or that
Yes,
committee.
thank you. Do you want to address that as part of your bullets? Do you want me to jump in?
So actually both of us probably.
Sure.
So yeah, thank you for the really good point. I would suggest that the JEDIA values, diversity, equity, inclusion, everything that stands for, be woven throughout the work that the CAC does, as we try to do on staff, and I know our board emphasizes that. So I don't know if there are specific elements. Do you have?
We do. But thank you, Ray. As part of objective number 4, actually, because we no longer have a subcommittee of board and CAC members. What we've done is just, in fact, we just did our joint board and CAC meeting, and we decided it was actually more effective to address the 2 bodies at the same time with updates.
But we would be looking for one, ongoing training, attending trainings that we hope to be offering, sharing our efforts and our achievements on social media and other methods. And I'm going to cheat just a little bit and look to Elizabeth as the project manager, not to put you on the spot. Is there anything else you can think of briefly that I did not mention?
I think in general, good evening, everybody. Looking at, especially as objective 4 is worded here, providing input on policy projects, initiatives as requested by the board. Jennifer's presentation this evening actually about the ADA transition plan is a great example of how our JEDIA work is kind of coming forward in the day-to-day and coming to you all looking for that feedback on how to engage with those diverse sectors of the community who would be great stakeholders on a project like that. That's what we hope to continue bringing to you all in more real hands-on project kind of ways and policy specific input.
And if I may just add to that too, again, really good point. And I think just as Elizabeth was saying, you know, as we're asking you to say promote 30th anniversary events or announcements or promote the opening of the Mayan Oyakma Coyote Ridge Preserve this fall, to give us suggestions about where else we can be pushing out that information to other cultural groups within our community, other channels that we aren't currently using. We do provide information to ethnic media outlets, but there may be some that we're missing. And so providing us with those suggestions, and then also using your networks to promote through those channels yourselves. All of those would be really, really helpful.
Any additional feedback on the work plan? That's not you. Okay.
Motion. I mean, motion.
Sure. I believe this is, okay, go ahead.
Oh, I'm through the chair. Yeah, I don't believe this requires a motion. It's an informational item to collect feedback.
Yeah, no, I'm good.
Okay.
I'm moving to get out.
Thank you.
Real quick, any public comment on this?
Very nice.
All right, and then we will move on to our informational reports, and first up with those is our board liaison.
I would just say that our board meeting, we had an incredible presentation on the Coyote Valley Master Plan. And I don't know when it was last presented to the CAC, but it is available online. And so Caroline can tell you how to connect to it. So it's really worth the time because it includes not only the goals, but some timeline. And with the flooding that has occurred this past winter or this ongoing winter, it really goes to show you how critical the Coyote Valley is and how difficult it's going to be planning in terms of use and protecting for agriculture. So that was a wonderful presentation by staff. The other presentation was on the natural resources. We have a relatively new employee that's the head of that program. And there's also that slide presentation if you're interested in taking a look at that. And on the training budget, there are a couple of things that over the years, I found that going periodically to the California Parks and Recreation training on different uses helped me make better decisions as part of this board during the course of my time. And then also coming in May is the Together Bay. And so you might check in with staff about how you could participate in that, because it'll be a conference that has many of the organizations throughout the Bay Area that will have booths there, so you can gather information about what is going on and how they're doing things in their areas.
Thank you, Garnett. And time now for a general manager staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Director Annabelle, for that nice summary. Just to follow up what she just said, Together Bay Area is the 9-county regional coalition that represents all the open space and park agencies, land trusts, tribes, nonprofit organizations, restoration organizations. Over 70 organizations now belong. They have a spring conference every year. It's held up, usually up in the East Bay. And it's on May 10th in Richmond at the Craneway Pavilion, right next to the Rosie the Riveter National Park. And I think we have about 30 folks from OSA going. I think we sent out an invitation to CAC. We'd welcome your coming with us. So please reach out to me or Joelle Garrettson, my assistant, if you have any interest in going. And then Matt and I were just reminding each other, the biggest land conservation conference in the nation happens every fall. It's called the Land Trust Alliance Rally. This year it's going to be in Portland, Oregon. And we would welcome having several representatives from the CAC if you'd want to go and join us. It's a soup to nuts, everything about conservation, from administration to conservation biology to monitoring to running boards and committees, you name it, everything. Really, really interesting, and it's always a good experience. They're going to be in October or September.
September 6th through 9th in Portland. And just a plug for the viewers. You can see conservation practitioners showcasing their projects in action. That's really outstanding.
And then one quick last thing, Mr. Chairman, I've let the board know that staff has been tracking very closely an electricity transmission project happening in San Jose, right on the edge of Coyote Valley, with the California Independent System Operator. And several weeks ago, CAISO, as they're known, selected a transmission developer called LS Power Grid LLC. We think they're out of Missouri. They haven't announced yet what site they're going to be working on. So we're trying to find out that information and sit down and have a conversation with them just to reiterate how important Coyote Valley is, how important Monterey Corridor is, how much money and effort has been put into this area by OSA, Post, the city of San Jose, and state officials, and make sure they appreciate as they develop their project there. It'd be really great if they worked closely with us. So anyway, we'll keep you posted on that.
If I may ask, are there specific risks we're concerned or just general development risks?
If you're familiar when you're driving on Monterey right around Metcalf and you see what the PG&E substation looks like, it's a lot of distributed facilities. So it could be something on a smaller scale that looks like that, or it could be bundled and put into basically a building on a smaller footprint. And then there will be buried transmission cables that connect one substation to another. So it's location, location, location. It matters where they build it. But there could be some opportunities as well as constraints. So for instance, if they decide to put the transmission cable under Monterey Road, they'll dig up that road, which allows us to work with the city and the developer to build some wildlife infrastructure. Right now, it's just a terrible situation for wildlife on that road. So there could be some opportunities there as well. Any other OSA staff report out? No.
Okay, if I may. So we do have a date identified for rescheduled UNNCAC meeting, the tour to Mayana Yakma from Coyote Ridge Preserve that we had to cancel previously because of the rain. We're looking at April 27th, Thursday, April 27th at 3:30 p.m. to do our rescheduled tour of Mayan Oyakma Coyote Ridge Open Space Preserve. And I will follow up with an email.
Thank you so much. Any other reports from staff? Open now to committee members. Anything to report from committee member?
Oh,
Raj, please.
just to say information, we organized a festival of color in Discovery Park in San Jose. Attended by more than 10,000 people. And it was attended by many elected officials, including San Jose mayor, 3 city council members, 8 senator, and 2 county supervisors. And along with the police chief. And our, one of the director, Kevin Gill, he was the one of the speaker over there. And he spoke on the behalf of telling what open source third party is. It's in front of so many years. That's good.
Thank you for that. Any other committee member reports? Seeing none, with that, at 9:25 PM, I will adjourn the meeting. Thanks you all so much.